couple days ago, I uploaded a video titled Revisiting some of Fortnite's best mythic items of all time, and in that video I had mentioned that not all mythics are created equal, and that is the truth. And so today we're going to talk about some of Fortnite's worst mythics of all time. These are just some of those items and weapons that just make you question how they even got the mythic rarity in the first place. With all that being said though, let's get right into it. Firstly, I just quickly want to get the worst mythic out of the way. That is the cardboard box from 2 seasons ago, Chapter 5, Season 1. I have nothing positive to say about this. This should be a common item, and it honestly doesn't even deserve more than 20 or 30 seconds of me talking, so that's all it's going to get. It was just a cardboard box. That's it. It was terrible. Should never been a mythic. Let's move on. So really officially starting this list, let's talk about Deadpool's dual-wield hand cannons from Chapter 2, Season 2. While Chapter 2, Season 2 is oftentimes known for its really strong, overpowered mythics, Deadpool's dual hand cannons stick out as being some of the worst mythics from that season, and in general some of the worst mythics of all time. I think people had really high anticipations for a Deadpool mythic. I mean, Deadpool is one of the most beloved superheroes, action figures, whatever you want to call it, of all time, and so him being in Fortnite, and he was, you know, being teased in the game for weeks at a time, and so we thought he was going to get an awesome mythic. And at its core, dual wield deagles essentially is really cool, but it just did not play out in practice. I mean, besides sounding cool, these weapons really offer nothing. I mean, you were doing extremely minimal damage, and you guys have to remember these are dual wield, right? So you're going to have very low accuracy, and I think they tried to buff it and balance it out a little bit by giving it so that you would get some shield back per hit. So I think it was 3 or 4 shield per hit. So every time you would hit the player with a weapon, you would gain 3 to 4 shield. But if you think about it, that is just extremely insignificant, right? I mean, let's say we're doing 30 damage a shot, right? And at that point, it's going to take, what, 6 bullets to kill somebody? You're going to be gaining, what, 20 health back? 1 mini? You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously my math is off there, but you get what I'm saying. I think a lot of players were really disappointed with this on launch, and in a season with so many dominating, powerful, memorable mythics, Deadpool's dual wield hand cannons stick out as the worst of the bunch. Next, let's talk about a mythic that I guarantee you somebody watching this video forgot ever existed. That is the Mandalorian's jetpack. Of course, when Mandalorian launched into Fortnite, it was super hype, and everybody was really excited about his thermal sniper rifle, right? And you can't blame us. I mean, as a sniper fan myself, this is one of my favorite weapons of all time, but people also forgot that when you killed the Mandalorian, he would drop his mythic jetpack alongside his sniper. The problem was this jetpack was extremely underwhelming, worse than even a regular legendary jetpack would be. You had an unlimited jetpack, which is good, but it had a kind of burnout timer. I believe it was like 40, 50, 60, around there, that type of distance, right? So after you would use up that time, and it would go fast, like you could really only use this for maybe 4 or 5 seconds at a time before it had to fully recharge. I really don't understand why they just made a worse version of the jetpack that had already been in the game and then just gave it a tier higher rarity. In my opinion, it was pretty stupid. One of the worst mythics of all time. Nobody used this thing. I vividly remember taking the sniper and leaving the jetpack behind, so there's no surprise to me that this is extremely forgettable. It was not good, and definitely one of the worst mythics of all time. Next, let's talk about an item that I think most people are anticipating being on this video. I saw it commented in my community post so many times. That's the mythic recycler. I mean, look, the recycler as an idea is kind of cool, right? Just take the environment around you and that becomes your ammo. Like, that is a really cool idea. But if you watch my video about some of Fortnite's worst weapons of all time, I talked about the recycler. It's a cool idea, just not executed properly. I think you saw the main problem was the explosive radius, right? For an explosive weapon, if you shoot anything a little bit near them, you should expect to do damage to them. You don't have to direct impact, but this launcher felt like it was legitimately you had to direct impact to do any sort of damage, and you were not doing a ton of damage. Why would you take this when you could just have a rocket launcher that would do 40 more damage and had a bigger area of effect? The fact that they took one of the worst weapons of all time and then just decided to give it a mythic thinking that would make it better is kind of mind-boggling to me. I really hope that this weapon never comes back to Fortnite. It was in an awful season, and I just think that the recycler needs to be banished from Fortnite history forever, especially the mythic version. It is a major disrespect to the other other actual good mythics. And so yeah, for those reasons, I think the Recycler is one of the worst mythics of all time. Let's just stick with Chapter 2, Season 6, and let's talk about the Spire Jump Boots. I believe that I had talked about the Spire Jump Boots in my video on some of Fortnite's most forgotten items, and it's true, they were a really forgotten item, they still are. And the jump boots were bad, not necessarily because their function wasn't great, but more so how hard it was to get your hands on them. For an item that takes as much work as it took to get the Spire Jump Boots, it was really, really underwhelming, right? If you're gonna put in that much work to get an item, you should be rewarded with a really, really good item, not just these really mid jump boots. If the jump boots just, let's just say, came out of a chest or something, I think it would be a little different of a conversation we're having, but for the work you had to put in, they were absolutely not worth it. And for those of you that don't know, basically the jump boots were an item that you would equip and you would have to jump 3 times consecutively. So you jump once, jump twice, and then after that third jump, it would almost propel you into the air and give you a little bit of glider redeploy. It's just not that useful. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It's just not needed. There's so many other better mobility items you could take rather than the jump boots. So I don't really understand why anybody would go out of their way to try and get these jump boots, and I don't think a lot of people did, which is why it is one of the most forgotten mythics of all time and definitely one of the worst. Next, why don't we talk about TNTina's Kaboom Bow, and specifically the one from Chapter 4. I think Chapter 4's Kaboom Bow is widely regarded as the worst mythic from the particular season that it was in. I believe it was Chapter 4, Season 4. Don't rip me if I'm wrong though. And to be honest with you, I thought that TNTina's Kaboom Bow was not great even in its original chapter in Chapter 2. I did not think that it was good. I actually thought that it was just a little bit better than Deadpool's Dualies, but it was still bottom of the barrel. But then they brought it back to Chapter 4 and it was just so weak. It did, if I remember correctly, 75 damage a shot, right? So if you're playing zero build where you have 250 health and shield total, that is going to take you 4 arrows to kill somebody at full health. Remember, you only had 5. Yes, it was infinite, but you only had 5, and it would take, I believe, 30 seconds to recharge a single arrow. Not to mention, you barely had any area of effect. You almost had to direct impact somebody with a bow, which we know is not easy, to do just 75 damage. This bow was super underwhelming, and I think most people acknowledge that this was the worst mythic from its season, and so it doesn't surprise me, and I don't think it's going to surprise anybody else that this is one of the worst mythics of all time. Next, let's talk about the Predator's cloaking device. Now, this is kind of an interesting one because I believe that we've actually seen a better cloaking device come out recently. Actually, just in Chapter 5, we saw the EMP kind of cloaking device, right? And I actually think that the stealth EMP, was better than this Predator cloaking device. And it's exactly what it sounds like, right? You would just activate it and you would turn invisible for, I believe it lasted 30 seconds. But I would take the term invisible here very loosely because, as I'm sure you're going to see in the gameplay, it was not that invisible. Like, you were pretty clear. This weapon had to be used in very niche situations, right? And let's not forget that you had to stand still when you activated it or deactivated it, and on top of that, it didn't even work in water. That activation and deactivation delay is actually a really big deal and could get you killed in so many instances. And while the Predator cloaking device isn't inherently a bad item, it's just there's better versions out there, and this would just be used in such niche situations that it really just wasn't useful a lot. And next, why don't we talk about some of these Star Wars mythics, and in particular, the DC-15 blaster rifle. This is actually unironically probably the best item that we've had on the list so far, but that's not saying a lot, let's be honest. You actually got really good damage here, and we're talking like Scar-like damage, right? Those like mid to high 30s. The problem was, look at the bullet travel time on this. I should not even call it a bullet, more like a projectile. You know when you can see the laser beam or bullet travel through the air, you know that it's traveling slow, and that's a problem, right? Because if somebody's not standing exactly still for like 2 or 3 seconds, you're not going to hit them, and we know how fast-paced this game can be. It is so hard to lead those shots, right? And we're not talking about Chapter 5, like, you know, the bullets taking, you know, the bullets not being hit scan or something like that. This is legitimately like a projectile. It took multiple seconds for a bullet that you shot to then reach your target. You had bad bloom and just a weapon that, in my opinion, doesn't really have any space in the Fortnite, and I'm sure it's cool for some of those Star Wars fans out there, and it is unique, right, which I'll give it that, but in my opinion, if you're trying to do any damage, please do not pick up this weapon. And as I just previously mentioned, we're going to talk about another Star Wars item. It's the final placement of this video, and that's going to be the E11 blaster. This weapon just keeps coming back and keeps returning chapter after chapter after chapter, and I really don't understand why. There's honestly like a little cult fan club for this weapon where there's just always people that come to my comment sections and tell me how good they were with this weapon. I'm sure you were good with it, but in 99% of instances, there is a better weapon choice than this. And I think ultimately it boils down to the bloom, right? If you're anything further than like, let's say 20, 25 meters away, good luck hitting 3-4 shots in a row. It's just not going to happen. If I remember correctly, the weapon overheated pretty quickly. And like the only time I could see this being useful is like if you're in a box with somebody and someone jumps in your box and you just kind of start spraying at them. I could see it being useful, but as an AR or anything out of normal like SMG range, good luck hitting any consistent shots with this thing. I'm sure there are some of you out there that are really talented and can use this weapon to great effect, but that is definitely not me. So skill issue maybe, but I think it is one of Fortnite's worst mythics of all time. So yeah guys, that is my entire list for some of Fortnite's worst mythics of all time. I definitely left out some weapons that were kind of borderline, so if you'd like to see a part 2 of this video, let me know, because I could absolutely make that. I have a bunch of other items listed out right now that I could do, so let me know on that. Let me know if you'd like to see a part 2 to Fortnite's most overpowered mythic items, because I could also do that. But with all that being said, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.